This is a story of an exceptionally long eviction, but I'm not going to tell the whole story. I'm going to abbreviate it and just hit the high notes. There was a house that probably in the 1930s was a beautiful house in a lovely neighborhood in south central Los Angeles, very near the Coliseum where the Trojans play their football games. And when I was a young lawyer, I was conducting an eviction on that house after a foreclosure. And the tenants there sort of used all the tricks they could. They filed bankruptcy and they would bring other tenants and have them pretend that they lived there to forestall the eviction. It was a laborious process, took a great deal of time. Ultimately, we got to the day where the tenants were going to be locked out, and it had taken so long and was important enough to the client by then that they wanted their lawyer to go, me. And so I went to the house, and you drive down these streets and well, they are straight out of a movie, but not the movies from the 30s. They were the movies from the 90s. And we went in there with the sheriff, and it was this large porched house, and you went into the house and the high vaulted ceilings and sort of the construction of that era. And we got in the house and noticed it was very dark because there was only one working outlet in the building anymore. It was the knob and tubing electrical system, and so there was only one outlet in the kitchen that worked, and so they had this spider web of electrical cords going through the whole house. It was a two-story house, probably 3,500 square feet. And the spider web of electricity went through the whole house to power the radios and the lamps and everything in the house. And additionally, there was no heat because the gas had been turned off, or not turned off, but there was only one working gas valve, and it was in the kitchen. And so they had the oven open and the burners on the stove lit, and that's what was warming the house. It was, I don't know, somewhere between December and February, and it would have been very cold in there without that. So that's the way the folks were living, and that's the sort of dwelling that they were protecting on the day of the lockout. And we went with the sheriff, who then walks through the house and secures the premises, and then he would hand me the keys, which is what he did. And before we did that, the lady and her daughter who were living there said, well, you need to get possession of the garage and the carriage house. And I frankly didn't even know what a carriage house was, but that's a small house in the back that I guess at some point horses lived in, or they put carriages in. But it at some point had been converted to human habitation, and that was before apparently this lockout, because when we went in there it was not fit for human habitation. It's important to remember that there was no electricity in most of this place, and so we went to the garage, which was just a garage, and that was relatively easy to get possession of. And we went to the carriage house, which had a lock on it, and at a lockout, the sheriff will actually cut locks off of doors and put new locks on and give you possession of the house. And so he opened the carriage house door, and you could hear some noise in there, but you didn't really know what it was, and it was sort of like an M. Night Shyamalan movie. Very dark in there, and the scurrying around turned out to be rats because he shone his flashlight in there. And as the sheriff lit his flashlight around the carriage house, there were principally only two things in there besides rats. Used hypodermic needles, and I don't think this was a nurse's station, and condoms that were no longer in their wrapper. So it was evident what had been going on in that carriage house. I tell this story primarily to prevail on you that there's potential danger in these evictions, and you need to be certain to hire professionals who can get possession for you effectively and keep you away from those dangers.